Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing today, Will?
Doing very, very well. Happy Mother's Day to all our moms and aunts and grandmothers, etc., who are celebrating this day.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day. It always feels like a weird day for me because that's when the graduation day is. So I graduated from college on this day.
Right.
4 years ago. So it's always like I'm always focused on other things when I think about all of the celebrations that are going on.
Yeah, here it's just like with all the universities here in the metro area with UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, NC State, Central. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like, all right, don't even, between the holiday and graduations, don't even bother trying to like go anywhere to like eat because everything is like locked down for the weekend.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you've been paying attention to some of the news going on this weekend. Then, lay it on me. What's happening? What should we know about?
What should you know about? Well, let's see. Yesterday, we posted stuff to our social media platforms, just a rundown of like all the cancellations as the seasons are coming to an end. Mm-hmm. Upfronts are coming this week. Got a lot of response from folks on the various shows. I guess as far as genre-specific shows, of course, The Gifted was canceled sometime back. Another Fox show, The Passage, was canceled. I know you watched it some. I had intended to do so, but it just never made it onto my viewing screen. And I guess now, if I do ever watch it, it'll just be just the first season. But other shows that got the axe were like Murphy Brown and several others. But also other shows were renewed, like The Orville. I know just seeing on our timelines, a lot of folks really enjoy that show. And also Fresh Off the Boat was renewed. And the reason why I just bring that one up is Constance Wu's meltdown on Twitter when she saw the news that the show had been renewed, and contrast that with the cast of This Is Us that got 3 seasons today, 4 through 6. And their renewal today. And I haven't seen anybody have a fuck it meltdown yet, so I guess they're happy about that. But, Constance, she was not happy that the show was renewed, and then she explained herself that it was because it was cutting off other opportunities, which is interesting given that, one of our favorites, Arrow, is coming to an end later this year. And I know Steven talked about that very thing when he was on with Michael Rosenbaum about how long seasons do interfere with other opportunities that the actors have. And, of course, with the finale coming up with Emily Betts end as a regular, that sort of is panned out there as well.
Right. It's something that people often forget about, is that when they're shooting like only a few weeks before we actually see it, or months, but still it has to go through editing and stuff, post-production. So they're constantly working, and the longer the season, the more they're required to be on those sets. I mean, Jared and Jensen Petal from Supernatural often talk about how, early on, when they were first doing Supernatural, they would pop up in horror movies. Well, the horror movies shoot in the summer. It's a quick turnaround, and then they can get back to their show. So suddenly you're limited when a lot of the bigger, more well-written stories tend to shoot when they're shooting their main show. So it's very hard to do all things. And that's why you see a lot of the movie stars not get placed into shows that are 23 episodes or 20 episodes long, but more of the 10 episode seasons, because that's only like a few months, and then they can do other projects throughout the year.
Yeah. So, you really do, with the upfronts coming this week and everything, you really do realize how much timing does play into it, and what a commitment whenever you do get signed on to a series, what that really means for actors and actresses.
Right. And I mean, with Constance Wu, I can understand from her perspective, she's trying to capitalize on something that occurred, which was pretty huge and could advance. But at the same time, honey, you should have never signed a multi-year contract like that then.
Yeah.
I mean, when you sign your life away, it's a steady paycheck, but then you're also limiting yourself because if it gets renewed, you're obligated then.
Yep.
So you have a choice to not renew your contract when it comes to an end, but you sign the dotted line.
Yeah. And just a good reminder for us all to make sure you think and reflect before you tweet, post, or text.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it also brings up the reason why, and my mom complains about this all the time because she's a big This Is Us fan. Like, she loves it. This Is Us is 16 episodes a year. You're not, no more, no less. And even the way they air those episodes, there's a lot of weird scheduling that occurs. And what I keep reminding her is they have Sterling K. Brown on the cast. They need him to be able to do his other projects, which FYI, he's going to be in the 3rd season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Oh my God.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of trying to make sure that you can retain the top talent while telling your story. And before we started today, you were telling me about how it got renewed for 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised by this. And no, This Is Us fans should be, because when it first aired, it got renewed for 2 seasons. And the showrunners have made it clear over the last year that this has always been planned out to run over the course of 6 seasons.
Okay.
So I think, I mean, NBC, good for you on locking it down, because especially Sterling K. Brown. But you also have a lot of other people who can go off probably from the show and have a lot fuller careers too. I mean, Milo Ventimiglia, he's somebody who's been like under the radar for far too long, if you ask me.
Yeah. He is and has. And, I've watched a few episodes. I'm not a deep follower of the show, but it's always been entertaining when I have watched it, and the talent on that show is amazing. So for them to lock all those people in for a total of 6 years is very impressive.
Yeah. And this actually is a good jumping off point to get into our discussion about Doom Patrol, because I stand by my statement, 15 episodes too long. It's wearing on me.
It's wearing on you. See, I thought this week, I actually enjoyed this week.
I enjoyed parts of it. Mm-hmm. I just don't understand why they keep doing this with all of these other characters. Like this episode, we were introduced to Flex Mentallo, and on the surface level, he's somebody who we met actually last week, but we learned more of his story or his complete journey and how he's actually met people like Larry before at Ant Farm and how those paths are interconnected. I'm just waiting. It just feels like another, like, okay, we have to make sure everybody's on board with the plan to go get the chief. Okay, we have to make sure they're all like mentally there. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, well, you could have done that at the end of maybe a few episodes ago, and I still don't see the need for 15, except for the fact that they wanted to do all of these runoff stories, and it's not as bad as Teen Titans. Like, no, there's at least some consistency.
Yeah.
And a thread, like one thread being pulled through. It's just, as a viewer, every time they introduce a new character, I end up skipping parts of the episode because I don't care about investing in that new character. I want to stay investing in the characters that I've started to get to know from the very beginning. Like, considering where this episode ends with Cyborg, it would have been more impactful for me had he been in the episode a lot more. But they couldn't do that because they were too focused on exploring Flex Mentallo's background.
Yeah, but see, I think for me, Flex's background was more was a true MacGuffin for really exploring Larry. And so, yeah, I get your point in that we are in the 13th episode, and we're introduced to another offbeat character who may have a tie to the overall big theme of the season. Mm-hmm. But I think for me, it was more giving us a greater opportunity to show the evolution of Larry and the negative energy that dwells inside of him. Because that was whenever they were in the ant farm early on, and they're first introduced to each other through Team in the ant farm trying to torture Larry and trying to get the negative energy being to cooperate. They basically use Flex as a way to show how, and I know this has been dealt with earlier in the season with Larry and coming to closure and acceptance of the entity inside of him. But to me, it worked really well because it basically put the bow on that part of the story, and we've explored it. Maybe it went one episode too long, but we see now why Larry and negative energy have to work together in order to be a complete unit, and why it's important for them to do so they can achieve this mission of rescuing the chief in the last 2 episodes.
That's a fair point, that this is really the conclusion of it, because while you were talking, I was thinking about, like, we've had the Danny Street episode, which I prefer over this episode. That also had a lot to do with exploring Larry and embracing that negative side of him, or that side that for so long he's basically wrapped up and hidden away. We had the Patrolling Francis episode, which had a lot to do with Larry. So I feel like we just keep getting these segments of his story. So next season, we understand Larry, writers.
Yeah. We don't need to go back.
He's a good character. we can end the saga, though.
Yeah. We don't have to go back in season 2 to re-explore this, because, again, I think the way the episode ended, it truly was the moment that the two of them accepted one another. And I think more is Larry accepting negative energy. Mm-hmm. And so we don't need, the way it ended, we don't need to explore that anymore.
Right.
We got that.
Yeah. It also had a lot to do with Rita, too. Yeah. And a surprising turn that, again, we said it last week, Mr. Nobody, ultimate puppet master, totally. Manipulation. I don't know what it is about these shows these days. I'm not paying attention or something. I was not thinking that. I was like, I was actually on the path of more like, are we going to see, like, how he used to know her when she was Rita Farr?
Yeah.
And like, there was an interaction. Mm-hmm. But instead we were told another story, and I like that story that she ends up telling about the baby and deciding to place her career over it, because when she heard that baby cry in the waiting room, mm-hmm. that really was interesting in how she responded to it. And I was thinking, like, oh, maybe they're going to go into this whole other realm about how Rita Farr, she is such a woman. Yeah. Like, in a way where they're going to have that conversation or explore that part where, because of what she is now, she can never be a normal woman. Like, right. And there is something about, like, my body is turned on me. Mm-hmm. And literally, I mean, she is Elastigirl. She's disgusting.
Yeah. Whenever she starts to melt, it's just like, it is very off-putting.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to bring it back up next season and explore it a little bit more, because there's a lot of good allegory in that whole situation.
There is. There really is. And I hope they do. But I think, again, this episode really, in many ways, was tying up a lot of the threads of our characters throughout, that we've seen them in this journey throughout the season. And because I think, and really focusing on, so, we were able to get Jane's story, a few episodes ago, and we learned about her, and they've made that conclusion. Now we're just seeing the after effects of it, because even in this episode where she and Cliff are talking about the underground, and Cliff still wants to be her friend and bring up the underground and talk about what happened to her and those kind of things. And, and she's just like, no, just stop. But at the same time, it also, it shows that she's still, even if she's made, I won't say peace, but she's come to some understanding about what the underground is.
Mm-hmm.
She still doesn't want to go journey into that place for whatever reasons, whether it's, the emotional energy it takes out of her. It's obviously it was a very traumatic event. So, we understand that, and and they didn't gloss over that when it ended. Cliff, on the other hand, he's just
he glosses over everything.
He does. He's like the most tone deaf individual. I mean, Vic's dad is died, like, in the hospital dying, and Cliff's like, yay, we got out of the ant farm.
Well, it's not that they got out, though. It was more of the fact that he was very impressed and very pleased that they saved Cyborg, who's a known superhero, and they're the underdogs, and they came through. And despite everything that happened in the ant farm, he's just like, bottom line, guys, we saved Vic. We saved
the Justice Leaguer.
Right. So I think it's hard for him to be like, but we didn't think we could do this in the first place. Like, right. There was a discussion, and we did the impossible. And so why not focus on that when all of this other bad stuff is happening? So I just love it. And also, you only pulled off the C, didn't you? That was like, the humor that Cliff adds to this show makes this show for me. Yeah. Like, if you remove him from this series, I will be honest, it may be just a bit too much drama.
Yeah. That was a great moment when she pulled the ass off, and also whenever Flex was lost in the world of the soap opera, and they were having a discussion about the chief, and so they were talking about, obviously, Niles, and then as Flex was thinking about, oh yeah, I know the chief, and it turned out to be the chief from the soap opera that Cliff actually ended up being on. I mean, that was just, and to show that moment down the road, and later in the episode, and that moment where Cliff was proud of his moment, his 15 minutes of TV glory, and how he was nominated for a Daytime Emmy, which was, again, so meta about this show, how self-aware it is, because soap operas have that reputation for
So it just brings the question. I mean, you're talking about how this episode, it really did tie up a lot of the character arcs, preparing us for the penultimate and then the finale. My question is, which snap killed Flex's wife? Was it a Hulk? Was it Thanos? Was it Iron Man? Because whoever did it, they released enough energy that they cracked into the DC universe.
I think it was Thanos.
Was like the special effects department just rewatching Endgame multiple times, and they're like, well, how do we make this dramatic? Let's make her into Ash. I don't know.
No, I think they were having fun, like the way they ended the episode of just, again, this is how self-aware this show is. I mean, with the way it ended with Mr. Nobody sitting in the lounge chair there with all the merch. Yep.
How do you like that merch?
Yeah.
I'm surprised that towards the, like, while he's doing his own monologue at the bottom, they don't give, like, a website link
they totally
or, like,
should have. That was
to
a missed
order,
opportunity.
call now.
They totally should have. That's a total missed opportunity there. I just keep expecting Mr. Nobody to, like, kill off all the writers and, just to, like, again, show how self-aware this show is of itself.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. It actually brings up the point that depending on how this season concludes, next season, will we hear a narration maybe from a different narrator or from a different villain? Mm-hmm. Or will Mr. Nobody always be in the background pulling the strings for the rest of the series?
I'm hoping it's a one-off, one season, and then they get a new villain next season. Because I think this, I know you said it's gone maybe 5 episodes or so too long, but I disagree. I think for me this season has, now that we're getting to the end of it, I'm starting to see why we had those other episodes that we, neither one of us were very fond of middle of the season. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, this is the type of villain that I think can work for a season only. And they need to have someone else, as their nemesis in season 2.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think it really is 5 episodes too long for me, just because we saw Marvel on Netflix. They did 13. Again, it was like 3 episodes too long. So, and then we've been talking about Cloak and Dagger, and they're always a solid 10 episodes. And there's something magical about that number that brings out the best in these stories.
Yeah. Again, I can't argue with you there as far as some programs do go way too long, but like I said, Doom Patrol has become one of those shows where it's like I do look forward to it on Friday, and it's been a while since I've had a TV show where I'm really looking forward to it coming on, and not like feeling like I have, I'm looking forward to watch it because it's fun and not out of obligation.
Yeah. I know the real reason why you're thankful it's 15 episodes. It means that we don't have to talk about The Flash for a little bit.
Yeah.
Which we will.
We'll get back to it. Yeah.
We will return.
They haven't lost me all the way, but there's been some moments where I'm just like, damn. This is tough.
I still continue to not watch the Arrowverse, but I will this week, and we will see how it all ends and share our thoughts with hopefully a few others. So be on the lookout for that. Let's switch over to Cloak and Dagger.
Okay, sounds good.
Vikingtown Sound. This episode. So, where do you even begin with this episode?
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly what the promo said it was going to be last week, and this show is just so good.
It is. It really is.
It's having a sophomore season that I have not experienced from another show in a while, so it's very refreshing. Because, again, who else forgot that Mayhem was still in the pocket dimension? I did.
Well, there's a lot going on, and it's easy. You can be forgiven for forgetting that she was there.
Thank you. I was just. Did you remember?
I did actually.
Okay.
But I was wondering how. I did remember that she was there, but I was wondering how they were going to use her in the pocket dimension, which the way they did was very, very satisfying and made total sense as far as the way they have structured the season.
Yeah, let's just focus on that part of it, the pocket dimension and everything that happens in there, because she isn't the only visitor. Right. Andre, of course, is there, but Auntie Chantel shows up and gets pulled into this story as well in probably the best way, where Andre goes to her and gets a reading. and she starts to realize who he is and what he wants. And he's still going about these headaches. The man hasn't appeared, to me at least, once in pain, so I don't know when these headaches occur.
Yeah.
Just saying. And she reveals that, and we talked about it last week. I think I said he was a Loa, but she actually explains that no, he's on the cusp of becoming one if he figures out how to unlock and open the door into ascension, which will cure the headaches, but also maybe do some other things to him that he doesn't know about.
Right.
So that's all very interesting and just crazy. What I'm wondering, Will, is that image that he kept seeing and he wanted Auntie Chantel to explain to him. We've seen that last season, right?
I believe so. I was trying to go back and see if I could find out if whenever she was explaining the divine pairings and when if we did see it, either Avita found that symbol and was asking Auntie Chantal about it, or it was whenever she was going through town when she discovered the Roxxon energy pipe that was where all the negative energy and was seeping out into the city.
Right. I feel like I saw it in those, that episode 4 when both Tandy and Tyrone were trapped in each other's hopes and fears. Mm-hmm. And Tandy was running through Tyrone's house, and instead of the pictures being on the wall, they were replaced with that symbol or portions of that symbol. Like I don't know. It is definitely worth some investigation, but. Yeah. And this is what I really appreciate about what's happening this season. It's making me think, did we already see that? Was the Easter eggs already planted? How is this all connected? It actually makes me want to go back and rewatch some of the first season episodes.
Definitely. And it's the second week we've had this type of discussion, and yeah, it's been a while since I watched the first season episode, so I'm like you, where I do want to go back and see if there are connections and, as you said, Easter eggs that were foreshadowing some of what we are seeing now.
Yeah, and she drops, I think my favorite line of the episode, which is, all this pain you create and play with. Because I kept trying to figure out why did they choose the record shop as his place to go through people's memories, to break down their pathos. And she just summed it up in that line so beautifully, because that's exactly what he's doing.
Exactly. Yep. It is.
An easy thing would have been to do and make him a puppeteer and have all the dolls and everything. But this is so much more creative and interesting.
It really is. And also the use of music in this show was just so well done, because at the very, very beginning, just to get out of the pocket dimension for just a second, whenever he was playing that trumpet, when they were at the Vikingtown, at the motel, and just to set that creepy, eerie mood of what's going to happen here. It was it was almost like a horror film as far as setting mood, and to carry it forward, that use of the music and the records, and whenever we were listening to Auntie Chantil's record of when we were learning a little bit about, I guess, her sister, when in her birth, and how Despair Andre was trying to use that moment in her life to work his powers, and she was just like, no, I see what you're doing here. I've been down. I know my journey. This is not going to work with me. But also it kind of set up for her knowing that she's going to have to sacrifice herself to help, especially when she recognized that Mayhem was there.
Yeah.
And she, did the Doctor Strange finger. Don't come. But yeah, it was just really Yeah, it was really like showing how she has always, and even like, carried forward from season 1, how she's always been the one to help put the pieces of the puzzle together as far as what's going on. And so, if indeed she is indeed dead, I wonder if that's going to be the new role for Evita as part of this show as we move forward.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if she's dead because she also wasn't. I don't think she was there when Mayhem came back in and started destroying all of the records.
I thought she was.
Oh, okay. I don't, because then where was Andre at that point?
I thought Mayhem looked over and saw her on the floor when she was busting up all the records.
Okay. I don't remember.
I mean, there was a lot going on.
So where was Andre?
He had gotten distracted, I believe, by something else.
Okay. Because I can see how he would capture her because he still needs her alive.
Yeah.
I don't think he would kill her.
No, I think she sacrificed herself through I don't know if it was, I don't know if it was like the negative powers in the dimension or how, or she collapsed to take herself out of the dimension or what, but obviously she was incapacitated when Mayhem started breaking all the records. And Andre, I think, was pulled out, I guess, to deal with the situation back at the hotel.
Because he wasn't at the hotel at the end of it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot we don't know about this pocket dimension, clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was surprising when Auntie Chantel just managed to enter it without anything, and I love her reasoning, like, yeah, I've been touched. I'm like, we all have. I'm just self-aware about it, and I know how to use it. Yeah. Which I think really what this is kind of a train station, I want to say, of just waiting for the next path, and whether you're going to the real world or this other place where all of the Loas are. Maybe it's just like this in-between place between these two worlds. It
is an in-between place, and I think we've seen it manifest itself in these three characters, Ty, Tandy, and now Andre, in different ways. So Tandy uses it as a place for tapping people's hopes.
Mm-hmm.
Ty uses it as a way to tap into fears, and Andre obviously taps into it to manipulate people's despair.
Mm-hmm.
And Auntie Chantil, I think, given she obviously is attuned to this pocket dimension in a way that through her knowledge of the spirit world and voodoo and everything else, she's attuned to it and can interact with it. But as you just said, and as she said in the episode, I'm very self-aware of what's going on, and this is how I can navigate the two worlds.
Right. The way you just said that makes me wonder, because despair clearly is living in this other world and has set up shop, so to speak, mm-hmm. which despair comes when you don't have hope. Well, fear is part of that equation as well. Like, it's a branch off mm-hmm. fear, mm-hmm. and that's what Tyrone. So maybe next season we will find somebody living in wherever Tandy goes to view people's hopes. And see a branch also in that aspect.
Yeah, that would be interesting that would be really, really cool if they did that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the show's all about parallels.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, this was so well done, because I didn't really I thought I understood the records last week and how they all worked, but seeing how Andre manipulates Tyrone this episode through the records, mm-hmm. and more importantly, seeing Mayhem come in and start throwing things out there, and that that parallel they draw between what she decides to play and what he hears, like sitting on that
the
bus.
trolley. Yeah.
Yeah, on the trolley and getting surrounded by all of the ballerinas.
Yeah. And that was a great moment. Aubrey's smile there he just conveyed so much in that scene with the smile before popping off the bus. Yeah. And because that was that restoration of that hope and that restoration that, because Andre, in their interaction, he was very convincing as far as manipulating Ty's fears and despair and gaslighting him and using that against him. Be like, no, this Tandy girl, she's going to forget you. I think that you pulled out the line, when karma comes collecting, you're going to be the one left with the bill.
Yeah, and I think that he tapped into some of Tyrone's reservations about their friendship with a lot of what he was saying, because even though he is a master manipulator, there's truth to everything he's saying to Tyrone, and last week to Tandy as well. These are really thoughts that are on their subconsciouses about who they are, what they mean to one another, and how they will continue being there for one another. Yeah,
especially how they left. It's almost like he tapped into that moment, and he really used that moment where they had the moment in the park where it's that one thing you always sometimes hear, the cliche, you don't want your last conversation with someone to be, on a bad note. Mm-hmm. And that's how it was with Ty and Tandy right prior to her being kidnapped.
Yeah. Yeah. And he feels like he let her down, mm-hmm. because maybe if he hadn't said that, maybe if they did work together, then she wouldn't be missing.
Right. Yeah. And I was reading some commentary from other sources and stuff, and I was putting together notes for our show today, and someone made a good point about the big bad and it not necessarily being Andre, but the way Andre used society as the big bad, because again, we've had this thread of race and gender and sex and everything come through this, the series the last 2 years. And with earlier in the season, we saw it with Tandy, where he was like, with the girls being kidnapped, it's like, if these weren't girls of color and it was you on these posters, the world would stop, like it does whenever you have these situations. And then of course with Ty, he was like, look, you're just another black kid in America, and she's white girl of privilege, and not knowing Ty's backstory, which actually he has a very nice middle class upbringing, and Tandy did too, because her dad was an executive for Roxxon, but Ty equally has the opportunities, but at the same time, and I know we'll riff on this here in a bit, but also how Adina feels the system is set up to not work in her favor.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. It's interesting how on Friday I watched an HBO documentary about the USA gymnastics scandal. And I learned so much watching that, and it made me sick to my stomach. But because what they really hit on is, yes, you can demonize this one person who is sadistic, who did commit horrific crimes against children.
This is Dr. Nasser?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is more shocking and what is more disturbing, in my opinion, is the fact that adults knew what was going on and allowed it to happen multiple times. Different agencies, like a organization as big as Michigan State University, who gets a Title IX complaint and it still continues for another 2 years. Are you kidding me?
Right.
So my point is, it's not just culture, it's just the way we humans can be in terms of how we try to survive in this world and allow kind of our survivalistic instinct get the better of us in just being a good person. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I mean, at times culture is the enemy. Like society and the barriers we build for one another, it always gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how despair creeps in, or fear creeps in, and hope becomes diminished. Because if you just feel like you keep hitting the same wall over and over again, it's kind of like, what is the point? And and why should I complain if this is happening to everybody else? I don't know about the last part.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, and it's I think that's why I think this show is really resonating with me this season, and in a way that some other shows don't, is that there is this larger story of trafficking, and kudos to the writers and the creative team of this show, because you could have taken something that is a very real issue, and obviously this is a network that caters to teenagers and young adults, and it could have easily come off as very tacky and off-putting, but they handle it with enough sensitivity, and it's very clear, especially whenever we're seeing those scenes in the motel, as far as how these girls are gaslighted, how they are manipulated, how they are controlled to engage in these activities. And you really, it shows a level of research and understanding about this issue. And even though it's done in a superhero show context, and obviously Tandy was able to get out, it's still, using her as the agency to show how hopes and stuff are crushed by the trafficker, in this case Andre. It really did do a good job, I think, of getting into this underworld of activity, and show how these victims are being treated.
Well, I think what they did so successfully in this episode is that it wasn't Tandy regaining hope, technically.
Right. No.
It was her, the person, Della, I think her name is, who finds her strength and realizes all of the lies that she's being told.
Yeah.
And in that moment, when she decides to stand up for herself, that's when Tandy is. And for Good Tandy, point. Yes, at one point she did want to go and escape on her own, but you also saw multiple times when she's thinking to herself, it's not just about me. It's about getting all of these girls out. I can get out, but I have to come back. It's never been about just her, which reminds me about that exchange between Andre and Tyrone. What did you think about that line where Andre makes a good point that Tandy has no remorse, and which is very different from Tyrone, who broods in remorse all the time.
Yeah. I think this was, Tandy did not have remorse, but I think part of this journey was to help her build some humility. I mean, maybe not humility is the right word, but it was there to basically, I think, help her. Because I mean, there are moments when she is very self-centered. So
yes.
So I think it's fair to say that, and I think she going through this journey and having this experience happen to her has opened her eyes to other people's. It has made her more empathetic. And
because
I don't know
she also, I mean, in this episode, she was one of those girls, but had things been different in her life, she may have been one of those girls a lot sooner.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, interesting. So another thing that I did not expect them to do in this episode was to bring back Connors.
Yeah.
And also, like, and we've commented on this before, that the writers really understand that there are two leads in this story, and you can't have necessarily one focus on one character without the other. So they're a yin and yang. And it wasn't so much about Tyrone, but it was really delving into his parents' grief about his brother's death and coming to terms with Connor's, because Tyrone in a way has come to terms.
Yeah. He has.
And he just is looking for his freedom so he can get out of the church.
Right. Yeah. He has definitely made, I won't say closure because I hate that word, but he definitely, as you said, he has come to terms with it. And I think that this episode with Adina and Connors in her house and cooking the crabs and just how that was all just set up. The episode was good, but this whole sequence, every time that they came back to that moment, I was glued, because I just want, it's the way she was just like prepping the meal, and Connors was like, I need to go to the bathroom, and she's like, and no, and he's bound there, and
it's a great Mother's Day episode.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
But you're absolutely right. She acted that story so well that it didn't have as much action as what was going on with Tyrone and Tandy and Mayhem, for sure, especially with their last sequence, which was marvelous. But this tapped into, just by nature of what they've set up with these characters, they can really delve deep into emotional trauma, which is just as intriguing for a viewer to watch as a fight sequence is. Yeah. Even more so because that people actually go through this kind of grief on a regular basis.
Right. And I mean, it was the psychological warfare between the two of them that was going on. It was just her prepping this and and Connor's very vulnerable, and you're wondering, because up at this point you're wondering what his motives are as being so cooperative with Ty. And he had the moments with Ty's father, with Otis, I guess a couple episodes back, but it wasn't like this mother's like grief that was being channeled through, and Gloria Rubin just carried that off so well. It was like otherworldly, like she was, you really wondered if she's going to kill this man or let him go, or what's going to happen. I mean, it was just one of those like moments where you really did not know which way they were going to go with this. And
I liked all of her questions, because the questions all made sense by the end of it. The whole interrogation of like where she started to what she was really getting at, and then to break down in that way at the end of it. And then I love when actresses or actors do this, when in the single frame they go from complete devastation and have an emotional release to, okay, everything is back to normal.
Yeah.
And she did that, and
she totally
it just blew my mind.
Yeah, she totally did that, and just, I mean, I felt her pain, and also just answering the question, because it's always, and when Otis came over too, and they went upstairs to talk, and then Connors is sitting there and trying to work his way over to get the knife, and then and it plays into the whole atmosphere of the scene, and so he's trying to hear what, because part of me is like, I wonder what they're discussing upstairs while this is all going on with Connors, and then he gets to the knife and stuff, which I'm like, okay, now he must be like, ragdoll or something, if he can, like, some contortionist where if he was going to like be able to cut it free himself if he was successful in getting it. But then he had to work his way back, and then one of the things when I was watching that scene, it was like she realized what he was doing while she was upstairs, and how is this going to impact what's going to happen next between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was definitely well played. Her despair, and also again getting to our earlier discussion about how the system can or cannot work and benefits for individuals, and her talking about learning about how he had basically assassinated her son, and how she was trying to get justice for Billy, but she doesn't think that was going to happen, and she's trying to do all the right things, and it's not set up to work for me, and it was just so many levels as far as, again, why the shows works so well, and into the overall bigger picture as far as what's going on this season. It definitely was one of the more standout moments for me in this series.
Yeah, I agree with that. I still think I prefer last week's episode over this one, but by like the smallest of margins.
I would agree with that.
And more importantly, it's insane what they're gonna do next week.
Yeah.
I still don't like they are really, this portal dimension has become the best little narration device that the writers could come up with, because they're really milking it. And but I like it because, like I said before, I always repeat myself when we talk about Cloak and Dagger. I can't help it, but because we've spent so much time with Tandy, and recently a lot of time with her being the victim and needing saving, that next week she has to return the favor to her friend and save Tyrone, who he's now in the pocket dimension, but he's also carrying it. I don't know how it all works.
Yeah, so I just took that moment at the end. I think he was just tapped out. And because he had that was one hell of a fight scene where he like popped into one and then jumped, came back out and like drop kicked that guy. That was that was just so. That was definitely one of the best fight scenes I've seen in a while.
Actually, this makes sense because from what I understand about these two characters, part of why they are so linked is because Tyrone needs Tandy's hope in a way to survive.
Right.
So if she withdrew from it, he went through a withdrawal process, and that's really why he's suddenly exhausted.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah.
And what they're going to delve into. Okay, got it. Yeah,
he's just completely spent. So both emotionally, like I said, things you just said, and so that's. But it's interesting when they did reappear after he collapsed. They were back in the church, which is sort of like their bat cave. So.
I don't know what was wrong with my screen. I couldn't tell where they ended up. I was trying to make things out. I was like, what? I had to replay it a few times. So thank you for clarifying that to me.
Yeah, they were back. They were back in the church.
Always goes back to the church.
Always goes back. It's the bat cave. I'm telling you.
Well, she's back at the church. We don't know where he is.
I guess he's sort of in between the two dimensions. Yeah,
he's definitely.
But that's their sanctuary. So where the resolution of that will happen there and in the pocket dimension. So next week is going to be a really awesome episode. And I saw some notes from the showrunner who also directed this week's episode. I guess we're going to learn about Andre's origin in episode 9 which apparently will set up for the conclusion of the season.
You gotta tell that origin. Well, we'll see. I'm going to reserve reservation for next week. because I feel like we've learned a lot about his origin story, so it'll be interesting what we haven't learned, because hopefully that's really why they're doing it and not just to show us everything we've been told thus far.
Right.
But these writers seem to understand that their viewers are smart, so.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Well, that's it for us today. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. But most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.